right now, and I'm being sincere when I say this. I love basketball with my heart and my soul. It's been tough to watch games this year. I really don't love the product this year.
What about it?
It's fouls are terrible. I'm watching this Lakers and Grizzlies game last night, and I feel like it's a perfect example of one. Lakers aren't really a great three-point shooting team. We let off almost 40 of those things last night. And I think our defense played the best that it did and probably all season long outside of the first stretch of games. But both sides, you would think, everybody says the Lakers have the best whistle in the game. We shot over 30 free throws. The Grizzlies almost shot 30 free throws too.
Yeah.
It's just an ugly brand of basketball that we're watching. It's just, and I said it to you, I don't love watching the Celtics play, but I usually love watching the Lakers play, and I haven't enjoyed it that much this year. I just think that it's been just late. I don't want to call it lazy, but when you see people settling for 3-point shots just because they're more valuable and it's fair, it's analytical, it's not as exciting to watch. I like seeing somebody break down a defender, go to the basket. I love a highlight play. I love watching John Morant play. He just had a bad game against the Lakers. He goes 4 for 17. He does. Agreed. And AD was awesome to watch, awesome last night. But it's the brand of basketball that I'm watching that it's tough to see. And I know I spoke on earlier saying that when Jason Tim talked about the Celtics, it's like I can separate the two. The truth is, this style of basketball leads to wins. And the Celtics are amazing at this style. Is it fun to watch? No, it's not.
Yeah, not to get too off track here, but I do think there's something to analytics hurting the game because free throws lead to more stops, and 3-point shots aren't aesthetically pleasing to watch when teams are taking 32 of them a game. And it leads to that kind of lack of character individually between teams where it feels like everyone's playing the same exact way. Even if they have different styles of play, it always ends up that same exact visual product. So I kind of can get where you're coming from.
John, I feel like you don't want to get too off track. I have OKC in this game. I think OKC is the better team. I think the discussion on the NBA ratings as a whole is an interesting conversation because the ratings are at an all-time low. Now, I wouldn't say like an all-time low, but they are lower.
Considering. Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of been the main thing that anybody's talking about on Twitter. I do think it's kind of a tired conversation because when you look at the viewership graph, it's not like there's like such a big decline. I think the decline is like, it's a little bit, but it's not to the point that it's like, oh, basketball, is dying or whatever. Mm-hmm. I do think that there has to be more of an emphasis on building up the game and the storylines around the game better because I just watched the Larry Bird and Magic Johnson documentary and how that sparked interest in the league. Because looking at the timeline of the NBA, every single era has its guy, its star. In the 60s, it was Bill Russell, and I'm forgetting about the 50s, but I don't want to go back that far.
Bob Cousy.
Mike in.
The 40s.
Yeah.
Into the 50s.
In the 60s, it was Bill Russell. In the 70s, it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And in the 70s, there was actually concern that the NBA was dying because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was kind of like a Nikola Jokic-esque star, where he's the best player in the world, but he doesn't really like the camera and he doesn't have that eccentric of a personality. In the 80s, Magic and Larry Bird saved the NBA, that rivalry, and it sparked the most legendary rivalry in basketball today, which is the Lakers and the Celtics rivalry. In the 2000s, in the 90s, we have Michael Jordan, who was a phenomenon from a cultural standpoint. In the 2000s, we had Shaq, we had Kobe, we had LeBron, we had Duncan, we had Allen Iverson, who he was a cultural icon in the 2000s as well. In the 2010s, we had LeBron, we had Steph, we had KD. In the 2020s, who is that star? There's been tweets on Twitter that I've seen that Caitlin Clark is more popular than any NBA player today. From young stars, absolutely. She's more popular than Wemby. She moves the needle more than Anthony Edwards.
Yes.
She moves the needle more than Jason Tatum than SGA. The NBA right now in this era, we are almost 5 years into this era, and we don't know who the mantle is going to be passed to. We don't know who that star, that face of the league is going to be because it's much more than just level of play. It's marketability as well. Mm-hmm. And there's no player right now in the NBA that has that sort of marketability.
I think outside of Giannis.
I think players do.
I think Giannis is the guy that I look at personally. I think Jokic is defining an era this decade. Him and Giannis themselves, but in terms of marketability, you see when it comes to all-star votes, Giannis gets more votes than LeBron sometimes. And that LeBron is the definition of the face of the league.
Right.
And Giannis is even competing with Bron with votes. I've seen Giannis get more votes than Kevin Durant. Giannis is a global phenomenon. That's something that we need to recognize.
It doesn't feel like it.
Could the style
I think
play,
it's because
maybe,
people
the
hate on his
aesthetics,
game.
The aesthetic
Like
aspect.
I just don't feel like it feels like they move the needle like that. When I even go on,
Giannis is box office.
when I go on NBA's YouTube channel, when every Lakers game, if it's against like a Kevin Durant, oh, that's getting 1 million views. The Steph Curry highlights, when the Warriors, when his face is on the highlights, it's getting 1 million views. They're moving the needle for the league, and I just feel like right now there's kind of just like a stalemate where we don't know who that next star for the league is going to be. I also think that illegal streaming has played a big role in the viewership numbers not being 100% accurate. But the NBA has made it very hard for the average fan to watch their own team locally play. I mean, it's a disaster.
I think the other thing too is all of these eras you're going through. We love parody, but every era had dynasties like Celtics, Magic, Bird, Shaq and Kobe, the Heatles, KD with the Warriors. All of these teams and eras have had dynasties where there's been one team that has maybe not dominated for the decade long, right? But they've always been almost an overwhelming favorite that on the other side, it's easy to root for them, right? Like there's almost a villain of the NBA where it's like, I remember when LeBron went to the Heat, I did not care who they played. I was rooting against the Heat every single game, no matter what. Today, I mean, Celtics won a championship. Denver won a championship. The Bucks won a championship. There's been different champions year in and year out. So I think what partially is they're kind of missing that villain. Like LeBron was the villain for so long. I fucking hated LeBron my whole life. KD when he went to the Warriors, and now there's not really the case. Like I think the best chance, like the Celtics maybe, but even still the Celtics don't have like Tatum's never going to be a villain. Like he doesn't have the personality to be a villain. And as much as Jaylen Brown has more charisma and personality to him, he's not like a top 5 player that people are going to really want him to be a villain.
Right. The NBA lacks storylines, and I think this is why like Trae Young versus the Knicks is one of those that maybe could become it, but
the Hawks have to be good.
Exactly. It's Atlanta. It's a smaller market.
Yeah.
It's not a smaller market, but you know what I mean. I kind of wonder, is parody a bad thing for the NBA? Because as a fan, I love parody, but for the product, it doesn't lead to those dynasties, and it doesn't lead to those storylines like LeBron versus Steph. Back in 2018, we were all tired of watching the Warriors and the Cavaliers.
Speak for yourself.
But looking back now, obviously the Cavalier fan, different story.
Looking
Other
back
28
now,
fans.
I think it might have led to where the NBA is at today.
Yep.
Because the three-point revolution, we can acknowledge that Steph Curry changed the game, while also saying that effect also might have ruined the way that every other team plays the game, where it looks very similar.
field
It was
Just
fun
the
to
outcome.
watch
The playing field
the
level.
Warriors do it.
It is fun to watch Curry do it, and I don't even think watching threes is not entertaining because what is Caitlin Clark? She's a three-point shooter.
She is, but when she has the ball in her hands, she's an amazing
top of the league in assists. She
playmaker.
leveled
She
the
can
NBA
get
in
down.
assists,
She
right?
she was number 1 in assists, the
as a
first
rookie.
rookie to ever do that.
I understand that, but Caitlin Clark, the alert to her game is that she could launch 40-footers.
You're cooking.
Like that's the alert to her. I think that LeBron James going to Miami, the super team era, really.
Yeah.
I think that hurt the NBA a lot because when LeBron did it, he became the biggest villain in the NBA and he caught a lot of backlash for it. But then Kevin Durant one-upped him. And I think Kevin Durant might have just as much to do with ruining the NBA. OKC and Golden State could have been one of the defining rivalries in the Western Conference for that decade. But he went to Golden State and he stacked the deck. And that ruined a lot of the competition and the integrity of the game when he did that. And it birthed this super team movement where, every team since then has tried to build their own version. And it's kind of messed up teams' futures. It's messed up their presence as well if it doesn't fit automatically. And I think, there have been super teams in the past, but like the Lakers and the Celtics super teams were built organically. They weren't built by
Yeah, but like Mickey Mouse
joining.
organically.
I understand you, but they weren't built like you beat me and I lost to you when I was up 3-1. I'm going to join your team.
Also, when we talk about the Bulls and their dynasty, Rodman going to the Bulls was a super cheat code. That was a fucked up move that nobody really overly cared about, that it was stacking the deck because Rodman had character issues.
They did lose Horace Grant, but yeah.
They lost Horace. Horace was huge for them in the first repeat. But then you got a souped up Horace Grant and Dennis Rodman.
And Tony
They,
Kukoc.
so yeah, they don't talk about how Dennis was like, he's not KD level, but
Ron
like
Harper,
the
too.
first of that type deal.
I also
it was
feel
more
like
than that too. It was Ron Harper and two.
They
Another
were
thing
stacked.
that's
also,
wrong-
I don't like when people compare KD doing what he did to LeBron what he did. I say that with the sole fact they were up 3-1. They were up 3-1. It is not the same what he did because LeBron's GM was dog shit in Cleveland.
It wasn't the same.
Limited
but
financial
they
flexibility.
also, he did sat the deck though. It was viewed as the worst thing until KD went up. What he did.
I'm not going to disagree
Joined
either.
the team that's won the most games in history.
I'll say this though, I just feel like with the NBA, it's 48 minutes, 12 minutes a quarter. The NFL's 15 minutes a quarter, an hour game. NBA games feel longer. They feel like they drag on more.
We know why.
Like
that fucking whistle's blowing nonstop.
the TV timeouts. Like I think an NBA game, when you're sitting down and watching the game, at most it should last 2 hours. Like it shouldn't be lasting 3 hours long as much as an NFL game when there's less time in the quarter and the game's supposed to be faster paced.
The end of the game stuff too is, I mean, it's been like that, but I feel like over these last couple of years, you're up 4, you foul with 58 seconds left, and now all of a sudden just back and forth, foul. That extends the game by 20
The
minutes.
last 2 minutes, exactly, the last like 20 minutes. So there's like a lot of things right now that the NBA has to fix within its product. I think making the game more accessible and just easier to find is like one of the main things. But I remember one of these podcasts we talked. You brought up the point of divisions and them mattering. I think the NFL, the reason why there's so much history behind the NFL is because we care about these division rivalries. And you're a Steelers fan. You hate the Ravens. You hate the Browns. You hate the Bengals. I'm a Knicks fan. I know the teams in the Atlantic Division because I talk about basketball, but the average person isn't naming you every team within the division. And I think if the NBA truly wants to start building up storylines and building up history behind rivalries, they have to make division games like matter so much more. Where in the NFL, you're playing 6 games against your division opponents. In the NBA, you should be playing 10 total games. So that means, or you should, like I say, let's say, okay, each division has 5 teams, right? You should play each one of those teams like 8 times, or like no, 6 times. So 6 times 4 is 24. You're playing them a quarter of the season. So all of those division games that you're playing against your opponent, they matter much more. And the seeding in the NBA maybe can copy the NFL style where whoever wins the division gets the top seed. So it doesn't matter about your record. You're 1, 2, and 3 if you win your division.
It's a fact.
And,
I like that.
And that makes rivalries, more apparent because now you're kind of building your basketball team stylistically to match up with your division opponent. That's why the AFC North has this, history of toughness because that's what their organizations are. Yeah. In the NBA, it just isn't like that. It's just like we're all trying to be Boston. We could give a fuck about the teams that we actually got to go up against in our division. Mm-hmm. We're all trying to be Boston. That's what we want to be. So we just want dribble penetration and we want shooters. And I think if they made division matchups more meaningful, it would create another layer of storyline and, just meaningness to the games in general.
It's hard to make it matter as much in the NFL though. Just because games, you know what I mean? Like, you only have 2 games against the Ravens. That's all you get is 2 games. Even in the NBA, it's like, shit, like, okay, maybe you only get 6 games, 8 games against the division opponent, but it's like, we got another fucking 80 games against everybody else.
That's the root issue. People hate me when I say this. The season's too long. They need to reduce the amount of games.
They never will, though.
And they never will because the idea is that you'll lose money, but if fans are really tuned out of your product, I think fan engagement and then your sales, which come from ticketing, revenue, everything economically, will then rise, which can cut that gap. And then ultimately, what happens? Stars are on the floor more. Zion Williamson played 4 games this year. Embiid 6. These are guys who you want to have faces of the league. And I think part of what I mentioned before, there are stars that are marketable. Shea's marketable. Anna's marketable. Giannis. Jokic, maybe not as much as a guy like Shea. But there's a lot of different guys they can market. I just think fans are a bit jaded by the product because of its similarity, game to game, and the fact it's too many games.
Also, it's a lot of small markets. Like SGA, you're in OKC. Jokic, you're in Denver. Like these aren't, like, you don't have, like, as great as Jalen Brunson is, one of the top 10 players in the league. he's in New York, right? If you had Nikola Jokic there, if you had SGA there, maybe someone who was more close to an MVP top 5 level, it's probably easy to market them. But all the top NBA stars are one European, which, you know, I don't really care about, but there's people who want the NBA, who is the USA NBA guy. It's like the best ones, like Jason Tatum, right? And people have different opinions on him. And then it's all small markets, Milwaukee, Giannis. Like, I think that plays a part in it too, because if you would have had, like when LeBron went to LA, boom, big move. Yeah. But we really haven't had one of those stars. Like, I think if Giannis in some hypothetical world got traded to the New York Knicks, that would blow up the NBA.
Right. LaMelo to the Lakers, and I want to apologize before. I said Jokic maybe isn't that marketable. I think that's bullshit. Jokic has had one of the 5 to 10 greatest peaks of all time. I was talking about James Wilder.
Well, you could do that, but still,
it's one of the greatest peaks we've seen.
The Gru shit kills me, though.
Market.
Like, I think unintentionally, Jokic is funny. Jokic is a funny, goofy guy.
He's an
and
personality.
To me, it's funny to watch him with the carefree mentality too. There's an aspect of that is kind of enjoyable. I just think the NBA doesn't realize, partially I'll say, that they have one of the best talents they've ever had in the league.
Yeah, he is the new Duncan, and Ant can be that Kobe.
I also feel like, you know, it's just hard to market a center. Like Hakeem Olajuwon had one of the best peaks ever in the 90s, and he wasn't like the marketable guy.
Shaq personality
put himself out there, but you know, when you
that's
think
like Shaq and Giannis. That's why I always compare the two.
Yep.
When you think about the 2000s, you know, the cultural icon of the 2000s was Allen Iverson. It wasn't Shaquille O'Neal. You know, Allen Iverson was the one that people wanted to dress like and be like and play basketball like, that he influenced people's games. So I just I don't think the NBA currently has one of those stars yet. You know, maybe they like back them up with like a ton of millions of dollars. I also think that every single person that has been propped up to be the next LeBron has failed. In the same way that people propped up everybody to be like Michael Jordan, like Vince Carter was propped up to be the next Michael Jordan. You know, LeBron was
Grant Hill was on his way.
Yeah, LeBron was able to carry that mantle, but you know, Zion Williamson, we propped him up and he broke down. You know, sometimes the league just gets unlucky when in Zion's rookie year, we have 40 fucking Pelican national television games and Zion isn't available for more than half of them. So, you know, it's also, they've tried to prop up some guys and it hasn't worked out, unfortunately, due to injuries or other circumstances or the level of play on the court. But I think it's just the storylines, because in the NFL, I think the reason why it's booming so much right now is because of the quarterback play. You know, that's the money maker. They're protecting quarterbacks, and there's no shortage of great quarterbacks. I mean, we just talked about Baker Mayfield being a potential franchise quarterback. He's like the 15th, 16th best quarterback in the league.
Don't
like,
say that to John.
The top guys in the league are just like, they're just different. Yeah. You know, this is arguably one of the best quarterback plays that we've seen in history and the rivalries in the NFL. And I also think just the unpredictableness of the NFL, where we don't know who's going to win every year. Like, we don't know who's going to win the NBA, but we have a good idea that it might be the Celtics or OKC this year.
Mm. Yeah. What do you think about reducing series sizes from 7 to 5 in the first round? Something to make the playoffs a little bit quicker, a little bit more interesting, more upsets. More like March Madness.
I wouldn't be against it.
I think there's just
that's
too
what
many
they added
games.
with the play-in tournament, and people
and
are.
It was a good idea, it's a good
love
concept.
the play-in tournament,
but I think the play-in tournament kind of makes that issue worse, where it makes the regular season mean even less.
Because you just need to get 10 seed.